Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I direct the ILRU program and the Southwest ADA Center at Tier Memorial Hermann. I'm also professor of biomedical informatics at UT Health. We're glad you joined us today. We have a great guest, and we're going to interview our guest right after this break from Focus on Abilities, so please stay tuned.
The following program is sponsored by ILRU, Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, and we're here today with Diego Demaya. Diego, welcome to Focus.
Thanks, Lex. Good to be here.
Diego, tell us a little bit about your background. I know that you work at the Southwest ADA Center,
Right.
and you're one of our preeminent technical assistants. You're also an attorney. Where did your degree come from, and where did your interest in disability rights start?
So I went to law school at the City University of New York School of Law in New York City, and proud of that. And I went to college here in my hometown of Houston, University of Houston downtown. And I became interested, I think, because I have a disability myself, a vision impairment. So I grew up with a vision impairment, so it was kind of like a natural fit for me. I always advocated for myself, all through college and moving forward, so I got better and better at it, and eventually decided to just pursue my education in writing. So I got an English degree from college, and then got crazy enough to decide to go to law school, and that's kind of what I did.
So Diego, when you were growing up, was your vision impairment static, or did it get worse? Was it progressive?
I would have to say that it probably progressive, although very slowly. I mean, I had much better eyesight when I was younger, especially through, my high school days. And then I had retinal detachment, and so it complicated things. And so it was kind of progressive. And then eventually I had a lot of vision loss, basically through college and then law school even. And so I'm kind of where I'm at now, which is basically having very low vision. So I use a cane to get around if I'm doing it by myself, or, I don't drive a car, obviously. So.
And when you were in school as a child, that must have been before ADA, before the
Right.
All Handicapped Children's Act and so on. That the school made accommodations for you?
Yeah, I think I was blessed that I went to Great Neck public schools in Great Neck, New York, out in Long Island, and they were very accommodating to children with disabilities, and so they had a really great program there, and I got a lot of separate tutoring. So it wasn't exactly what we have today. I think it was a little bit more segregationist back then, right? But I did get to go to the regular classes with all my mates and that kind of thing. So I kind of had a good experience with that. And then, it just gets tougher as you move along when you go through, once you get through 11th and 12th grade, and then college, where you're expected to do a lot more for yourself in terms of...
Well, in college, too, you took a course curriculum that was focused on writing, and I wonder, we didn't have the internet then. I mean, we didn't have computers, we didn't have talk to Siri.
Right.
How did you manage then?
Yeah, it was hard, especially with a disability, because they didn't really have large print screens or things like that. I mean, you had to have a lot of money to have things like that. So I just kind of got muddled through it with a lot of ingenuity of my own, and always wanting to be on top of technology as much as I could afford. So I started having a computer, back in the early 90s when I went back to college, I actually had a computer to be able to work with and do my homework at home, so it was really helpful.
You had a lot of support from your family, though, right?
Yeah, a lot of support. But, not as much as people might think, because your family can only do so much, right, in terms of your schooling and what you do when you're out of the house, when you're growing up and socializing and everything else. So this was way before the ADA, and nobody knew what the Rehabilitation Act was. It was there, but, in the 70s, but that's when I went to high school, the late 70s. So it was very interesting, as things changed along the way back in the 90s.
You're a big guy. 6 feet 7 inches, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, you were unusual in that respect, even when you were a youth, right?
I was very tall, starting ninth grade, taller than everybody else. And, they used to call me Lurch, if anybody knows the Addams Family. So, it's just things you grow up with, and that was kind of hard. People pick on you when you're tall. It's kind of strange, but they do.
Well, I was going to ask about that bullying. We hear more and more about bullying and affecting kids with disabilities.
Definitely.
How did you cope with that?
That wasn't so much anybody helping with that. That was really very much on my own, and I suspect that if I had to recall, the more less desirable moments, if you will, they were probably not very pleasant because people just picked on me. And on top of that, I had a sight impairment on top of everything else. So it wasn't like I could be in gym, with everybody else. I had to do separate sports in the gymnasium and, be tutored separately. So it was hard, and bullying still happens today, regrettably, and it's a big deal today in terms of watching out for kids and trying to figure out how to keep bullying from happening, especially against kids with disabilities.
Your personal experience, do you have any advice for kids today?
The best advice I can probably give for kids today, I think, would be that they need to, they have to become one with their disability and be comfortable and learn to be comfortable and not take so seriously that people call them names or four eyes or that they're running around in a wheelchair or whatever, and really tell their parents what's going on. And then, of course, if it gets kind of serious and people are just picking on you, then definitely go to the administration of the school and always report that. I had one incident back in my time where I actually had to go to the principal and just report it because I really got just kind of tired of it, and I was scared, didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they were helpful, when you're upfront and honest and tell them what's going on.
Good.
So definitely, have no fear. Just go and do what you need to do.
Diego, I want to move the conversation along to which you're an expert at, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we're going to take a break right now. But before we do, I want to ask a question that you and I can answer before the end of today's program. Now, I think most people know that the ADA was signed by President Bush on July the 26th, 1990. But many people wonder if the ADA has ever been amended. And that's the question of the day. Has the ADA been amended? We can talk about that in a later segment, but I want to leave that question for the audience. And I'll be back with you, Diego, and Diego and I will be back with you all as soon as we take a break from Focus on Abilities. Stay tuned.
We could start by telling you how sleek it is, how it's at the edge of innovation in its industry, that it makes connections faster and more convenient, We could promote the fact that even traffic signals give it the green light, and that it moves so quickly we had to give it its own lane. Or you could just ride. Discover where this rail-like ride is going next. Visit ridemetro.org/Metro Next.
You're watching HTV, and this is Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden. We're here with Diego Demaya, and we're talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Diego, you've been working in this area now since you finished your law degree, and
Pretty much.
Over that time, what do you think are the most significant changes that have occurred as a result of the ADA?
Well, I think I think top of the list would probably be the architectural accessibility of buildings everywhere, and that includes old buildings before the ADA was passed, as well as facilities that are being newly constructed or built after the 1991 ADA came into existence, the 1990 ADA, and so that's kind of number one. And then I think number two is in the employment realm. I would consider that to be second place, because a lot more people have finally been able to get the accommodations they need at work to be able to keep working productively and doing their essential job functions, so that's kind of like a number two. And then I think number three would probably have to be in the post-secondary education realm, where students are definitely getting much better accommodations, much more improved, ability to get through the academic programs that they choose. And so that's very important. And I think the ADA had a huge impact on those three main areas, in addition to many other areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd have to include transportation among those.
Transportation,
other
absolutely.
areas, yeah.
Right.
So Diego, there are many issues that are current. But among those issues, what environmental changes have been? We've been through COVID. I think the ADA probably approached COVID in a constructive way, and we learned some things during that period of time.
Absolutely.
Can you summarize that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Lex, from a maybe slightly more critical approach to looking at the ADA as a whole and how it's been working, I think it definitely it works. It's a necessary civil rights law, and I think it took quite a pounding during the COVID years, during the pandemic, and when we were all going into shutdown, and so. But at the same time, people were becoming even more aware then of the ADA, because, especially in employment, because of the ability of people being able to, or having to, work from home as a necessity. And that opened up a huge area for people with disabilities to be able to work from home finally, when before the pandemic they were not able to convince employers that they could do their jobs from home completely.
I agree with you. I think that because COVID more or less forced employers to adopt a remote workplace policy.
Right.
They had to do that to get the work done.
Yeah,
and in doing so, they opened the doors for a lot of people with disabilities who, for a decade, had been saying, look, we can use the internet, we can use new communications methods and technologies to work at home, and to do so frees us from depending on transportation that we don't have control over.
That's
and
right.
It frees us from needing to have environmental assistance or make adjustments to the environment that we have in our homes. And the fact that employers, after seeing their non-disabled workers be functional outside the office, suddenly realized that people with disabilities had a great point.
Especially highlighting all that technology, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
You think that was the main differentiating factor?
I think, I think that it put a huge focus on technology and what we could do in 2021 or 2020 when the pandemic started basically, and so employers finally knew what technology could do, at work as well as remotely, because not everybody could work remotely, obviously, because of the different types of jobs we have in our economy. So, but it was a definite wake-up call. And the ADA has been requiring accommodations to work from home way before the pandemic. I mean, that was nothing new. Many people with immune deficiencies, disorders and other types of medical conditions, had to work from home, especially like if they got into a car accident and they became, they ended up with a huge disability on their hands to deal with. A lot of people were able to keep their jobs thanks to the ADA and getting accommodations. So it's not that working from home was new, it's just that it got definitely reaffirmed.
I guess the other aspect of technology utilization that was magnified during COVID was the telehealth. And
Absolutely.
Before COVID, the telehealth existed.
Yeah.
But few clinical offices used it to work with their patients. They required them to travel
Medical industry,
short,
yeah.
long distance, whatever, wait in the clinic for 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes more.
Right.
And they learned during COVID that they could eliminate all of that so-called overhead and just see the patient in a timely fashion using the telehealth. That was a breakthrough too, right?
Yeah, it was a huge breakthrough. It's also, again, a wake-up call for the medical industry, for healthcare, that they could do certain things. Obviously, there's some medical necessities that you got to go see the doctor in person, but or get treatment in person. But it was definitely that on-air technology that we have now. Like it used to be that only radio stations and TV stations had that, and now we have that at home. I can pick up my iPhone or I could get on my computer and get a bunch of people together and do a conference call in a matter of minutes, and that's just unheard of. Not even 5-6 years ago.
I remember 8 years ago, I was interviewed by a national news service, and I had to go to a studio in a warehouse in downtown Houston that had a lot of facilities and big antennas on the roof and so on to do the interview. And during COVID, all the networks were interviewing people behind their computer in their bedrooms and their offices using the Zoom and other telecommunications systems.
No, it's really amazing. I mean, the fact that we can do Zoom calls in high definition is just, over the internet is just an amazing change. Yeah. For so many reasons. Yeah.
All right, Diego, this is good. I want to go on to some other new trends that relate to ADA and disability, but we're going to take a break real quick so people at home can take a break, and we'll be right back with you, and we'll be back with you with more Focus on Ability. Stay tuned.
Hello, my name is Guadalupe Hernandez. My work deals a lot with going back and revisiting these places of my childhood in Mexico and documenting them.
The influx of so many different people arriving here in Houston from around the world is very impactful on my palette as well as my canvas as an artist.
Mainly for me, just all the art that was in Houston was a big influence on me. It really got me serious about making my own.
The influx of so many people arriving here in Houston from around the world is very impactful on my palette as well as my canvas as an artist.
All the art that was in Houston really got me serious about making my own.
I'm Lex Frieden. This is HTV, and you're watching Focus on Abilities. We have Diego Demaya, an expert on ADA here today with us. Diego is an attorney with the Southwest ADA Center. And Diego, we take calls at 1-800-949-4232.
Right.
And you answer many of those calls. And our staff, other attorneys and paralegals, receive lots of calls.
Yeah.
Are the calls now trending one direction or another? What is the most frequent concern, question about the ADA that we get from our 800 line?
Yeah, so we've gotten, I think trending calls would tend to basically relate to employment discrimination. So people working with disabilities, and so we're getting, of course, a lot of questions about working from home or remotely. And then after that, I think you would have to basically mention web accessibility. People are concerned about going to websites to like order things, and they can't navigate. Not because they're just visually impaired, or they might be, but also because they can't use a mouse, or there's no closed captioning for a person who's
so
deaf.
the three main issues with websites are accessibility to people with visual impairments, and in other words, the websites have to be coded so that people who are using adaptive technology can actually read behind the face of the website. Is that correct?
That's correct, right.
How do we assure that happens?
Well, we're all hoping that web developers are picking up on the major cue that we have, a huge number of lawsuits against websites and businesses using websites to sell goods and services, and it's not about suing giants either. It's small businesses, so it's everybody.
So anybody who's doing business online,
right,
from Amazon down to mom and pop,
exactly,
is subject to being sued because blind people don't have access because the coding on the web pages is not done properly.
Yeah, or somebody who can't use a mouse, right? They can't tab with the keyboard. They can't get to the form where they need to get to. So everything is visual or point and click, and some people cannot do point and click.
Well, I do. Well, I can move the mouse a little bit.
Right.
I use the voice to text, and I direct my cursor with my speech. But some of the websites, I'm not able to direct the cursor to make all the functions work.
Yeah.
And for deaf people, they need to have captioning, right?
Right. They have captioning for any kind of video or even images, for that matter. That might be representing something. So it's really important that they look at those kind of like three key areas of web accessibility. And also, let's not forget the apps, right, that we have on our smartphones.
So, and that also affects people with intellectual impairments who have difficulty managing complex websites.
Sure, definitely.
So they should be simple and straightforward to manipulate, right?
Right. I mean, that security captcha that comes up on all the websites we go to these days, they're extremely confusing. A lot of people cannot navigate those, and they're very inaccessible. I think that they're working on making them accessible. Some of them are, but it's not everything. It's not uniform, and so we're hoping that with advocacy across the country and some of the lawsuits pointing out these issues, that web accessibility will become a lot more, widespread, and people will notice that.
What do you advise people to call 800-949-4232, or to call an attorney, or to write the company where they're trying to get access, or what? Yeah,
I advise consumers to basically let the company know that they're having issues accessing their web-based services, or even their downloadable apps, for that matter. Like, you can download the Amazon app, or whatever store you go to. Most of them have apps now. And so, I mean, shoe stores, the shoe companies have apps. But, that people deal with that directly, first because they want to get their goods and services. And usually people are willing to provide assistance by telephone, for example. Although we know, Lex, that that's not exactly, the equal access that the ADA guarantees, right? Because that's kind of like a separate. It's kind of like pushing people to go through a separate channel, whereas everybody else, they don't have to do that. So then, of course, then you have, you can call the ADA Center, you can call us, and or go to southwestada.org, and, look up what you can do in terms of legal remedies, or how you should proceed if you think you're kind of tired of going to the same place and they don't change anything. And then, of course, finally, you have filing complaints with the Department of Justice or filing your own private lawsuit.
Yeah.
So
Diego, the other week you had the opportunity to speak to a major conference, a national or international conference,
the
I
ADA
guess,
symposium,
about the use of AI, artificial intelligence, and how that may be affecting or affected by the ADA. What were your observations there?
So basically, yeah, I mean that's a huge area right now, is the use of AI and how it intersects with the ADA. And so I think that the more important observations that I can make as a student or scholar of what happens, how the ADA works, or maybe I think I like ADA nerd better. I'm an ADA nerd,
Right.
I think we all are. But basically, that AI has to be checked and double checked to make sure that when they use an automation tool that decides, for example, on hiring, on which candidates to pick out of a pool of resumes, that they don't leave out people with disabilities, or that it doesn't exclude them because the AI thinks that they won't be qualified to do the job because the AI may know that the person has a disability of some kind. And then the other issue is monitoring workers, right? We're monitoring people with, all kinds of wearable bracelets and devices nowadays. And people with disabilities need to be able to get accommodations when it comes to using those devices, which are going to be which are very standardized and cannot typically be modified unless, the administrators are willing to make whatever modifications when we need it for that individual. So that's what the ADA would require. So that's kind of where AI stands right now. It's a precarious place to be right now for employers using AI because they're going to have to start being very, very vigilant. And of course, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is on top of that as well. They've
But
issued
the bottom line is we don't
warnings.
want people using AI to be disadvantaged because
Exactly.
they have disabilities, and we don't want AI
Right.
to discriminate on the basis of disability.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
And they should definitely go to our website because the issues can get really sophisticated and more subtle when we're dealing with technology like AI. So it's really helpful if people start to learn how these things work and how they're used,
Diego, we've learned a lot from you today. We're going to wrap up our conversation, but before we do,
Yeah.
we want to answer the question that I asked
That's
at the
right.
beginning of the program. Has the ADA ever been amended?
Yeah, so the ADA was amended in 2008, and it became law January 1st, 2009. And basically, they clarified some things that Congress clarified some things that needed further clarification and affirmation. So a lot more people with disabilities were finally covered, like people who have cancer and similar conditions where before they were not considered as having a disability, especially with regards to employment, right? So, or going to school for that matter. So the amendments have worked out really, really well. And it has not been the doom and gloom that everybody thought it would be in terms of causing anybody any major expenses or litigation.
Yeah.
Or there really has been not much of that.
All right.
The issues are always having to do with either inadvertent or deliberate discrimination, and those issues always remain the same. So
And again, for people who are watching, ADA Technical Assistance Center, Southwest ADA Center, 1-800-949-4232. If you're watching from another state or even another country and you need information about the ADA, that phone number is good all over the world, all over the United States. So don't hesitate to use it if you need technical assistance on the ADA.
right.
You've been watching Focus on Abilities. Diego Demaya, thank you for being our guest today.
I'd love to be here. Thank you, Lex.
Thank you all for watching Focus on Abilities. This is a production of HTV. I want to thank everyone for watching the program, and we'll be back with another Focus on Abilities next month. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.